All right, guys, what's going on, man? Welcome to the Set It Off Network. I'm your host, Michael Set It All. It is September 4th, day of our Lord 2024, and we are here, sitting here as LSU fans, if you're watching this, most likely. After a very frustrating weekend in Las Vegas, spent a lot of money just to watch your team lose. Not a fun feeling. Glad to be back home and glad to be here talking with you guys. So, welcome in. We're going to break down the entire game. We're going to go through the ebbs and flows of everything good, everything bad, everything we got to get better at. And we're just going to kind of give our overall opinion on how the game went. I've had a couple of days now to kind of calm down because initially, obviously, I was really pissed off initially. But as you look back and as you kind of evaluate how the game went and let it kind of soak in and the initial pain of the loss goes away, you can kind of see with a clear mind. And I think this video is going to be a lot more positive than maybe in years past where we've kind of broken things down right after the game and it was not very positive. But we're here to bring positive energy this time. So let's start with the game. Obviously, final score USC 27, LSU 20. By now, you kind of know how everything played out. You've heard it from every different angle about what LSU has to do and get better. Well, you're going to hear it again because the narratives out there are just some of the most outrageous claims and inaccurate and just plain dumb takes that I've heard. And over the last couple of days, I've had time to look at them. Had time to process them and maybe even try to put any truth behind them. But that's really hard to find because there's some dumb takes out there, and I understand like people got to get their clicks and whatever. I'm trying to get clicks on this. So speaking of that, if you haven't already, why are you not subscribed to the channel? Do that right now, right here. I'll give you 2 seconds. All right, boom. You could have been done. You could have hit the subscribe button, subscribe to the channel, help us out. It's completely free. All right, now back to where we were. LSU loses this game 27-20, and I obviously think the most frustrating thing about the entire process is that I thought LSU was better. LSU was better than USC for 90% of this football game. I mean, you're tied 20-20 with 18 seconds left in this ball game. Like, granted, a chip shot field goal wins the game. You give up the touchdown. It is what it is. You were probably going to lose anyway, no matter what the targeting call. All of that stuff is not important to me. You lost this game well before that last drive. If that's kind of how I'm going to approach this, right? And in this game, wins and losses are determined throughout the entirety of the game, not just on the last couple plays of the game. I think people get lost in the last couple plays of the game because they feel so impactful, but those plays in the first and second half, or early first half, early second half, all those plays matter, and they all go into how the game plays out, if that makes any sense. And really, the game played out similar to how I thought. I believe these two teams are going to be in a feeling out process. I thought the defenses on both sides were going to be better. From what I heard from the USC side, from what I heard from the LSU side, both teams really thought that their defenses were going to improve. Did I expect it as defensive as it was? Absolutely not. My final score was 34-28, and we didn't even get to the 30s. Neither team did. You're talking about a 20-20 ball game here. With a 66.5 point total was the final line, I believe. So you get that, and then you get this defensive shootout here in the first half, right? It's 10-10 going into halftime, and LSU really feels lucky that they're up. And to start from the very beginning, my feelings about Brian Kelly taking the ball to start the halves is just, I can't do anything about it. I can say it till I'm blue in the face. It's not going to change the way he does things. The dude's won a hell of a lot more football games than I ever will. He's forgotten more about football than I ever will know. So I can't really go into the mindset. I just know what the odds are, right? And you take away a possession from you in the second half and add it to the first half. I understand you want to get off to a quick start, but the way these games always play out, those possessions at the end of the first half and the beginning of the second half, like Lincoln Riley had a chance to do extreme damage if he would have managed the clock better there at the end of the first half. And then obviously LSU gets a big stop at the beginning of the first half. But it goes back to you put so much pressure and so much emphasis on having to score on that first drive that you don't take the points, you don't take the easy 3 points, you go for it on 4th and goal from the 4 yard line, which is extremely risky, and you don't get it, and boom, now you're sitting here with a big old goose egg, right? And you give USC the ball. Granted, they didn't go down and score, but it just kind of felt like you did all this work for nothing type thing. And it's like you got to reward the offense for doing their job. They got you down the field in field position. You just didn't execute on 3rd down and 4th down. So don't punish them by, not getting any points out of this. Like, I felt like because I thought it was going to be a lower scoring game, I thought that was a very crucial time to take the points, and I felt like you gave a little bit of momentum and a little bit of confidence to USC's defense. Not saying that USC's defense needed that because they played extremely well throughout the entire night, but I just felt like that got the game off to a very not positive vibe for LSU, if that makes sense. Then, SC goes down and scores a touchdown, but you answer back. And really what LSU did in the first half was textbook, exactly to the game plan. They milked clock. I believe they had over 19 minutes of possession time in the first half, with USC having just a little over 9. So you kind of are a little over 10. You kind of outweighed them there. And it had a huge advantage in time possession, even in the first half, where you kind of dominated as far as the time possession, but on the scoreboard, like I said, you were tied at halftime and should have been down if not for a missed chip shot field goal by USC. So you can play the woulda, coulda, shouldas all you want, but I just felt like LSU didn't capitalize on the opportunities they got, and they should have easily went into the halftime with the lead of 13-10 because you took yourself away from getting points. In a game like this, points mean a lot, and I understand the logic there, but I just didn't agree with it on the first drive. If that's kind of what I'm trying to get to, But Brian Kelly's done it, and he's done it in all of these games, and it just feels like the LSU's offense is so good last year, and they just didn't do the 2-for-1 thing, and it just made no sense when they did it. Statistically, it just hurts you in the end of the games because you come out in the second half, you go down and score. It just feels like a big momentum shift to me. And like I said, it just didn't work out thing. One of the takeaways I want to have, obviously we're going to talk about the second half, was where a lot of the action was in this football game, because there's a narrative going around right now, and I don't know how people are coming up with this narrative, because I watched the game. I watched the game on replay. I watched the game live, and I don't see what people are seeing. They say the secondary played awful, and there was a couple plays where the secondary didn't play well, but, that's life. You don't have All-Americans out on the boundaries and playing safety. You have good football players. You don't have great football players playing on the outside, and I thought they played pretty well. I thought PJ Woodland and Ashton Stamps were amazing. I thought Jordan Allen was amazing. Jordan Gilbert had a tough game. Major Burns had a tough game, but you know what? That's who these people are. I'm not sure what more you could have expected. You held a guy who averages almost 40 points a game for his entire career to 27 points. 27 points, and we're talking about they had 20 with 18 seconds left in the game. So, this game is not at all on the defense, and people are talking about, well, they gave up tons of big plays. Did they? Did they give up a single touchdown over 30 yards? The one big play that they really had that they scored on was an offsides penalty where Miller Moss just threw it up, and yeah, it was a great throw. Guy was in phase with him. He had good coverage. I just don't understand this whole narrative that the secondary played bad, because they didn't. The entire defense played well, let alone just the secondary. The secondary took massive improvements off of what they were. So that's the first thing we got to get out of the system. The biggest concern for me is the offensive line, because you talked the talk all week. You sat here all week talking about how we're going to run the ball. And, guys, when you needed to run the ball the most, you couldn't do it. I watched tons of film today, and I watched the highlights of the game. I watched the entire full game replay. I ain't a damn thing to do in the airport, so I sat there and watched that. And I watched the offensive line majority of the plays. The offensive line and pass protection, elite, probably the best in the country. You have two elite tackles. Garrett Nussmeier didn't get touched last night, let alone pressured. He got pressured 2 times, is what I count. 2. The entire game is when he got pressure. And granted, one of them was on the 4th down and goal in the first half, and it was a big play in the game, which, happens. But pass protection, they were elite. Run blocking, not so much, which is crazy because of how physical they play when they pass block. You would think that would help them in run blocking, because run blocking is a physical thing. Like, it is, like they say pass blocking is passive. Pass blocking is not passive. That's the first thing y'all need to realize. The second thing is run blocking is like getting downhill, mano y mano. Like, this is time to show who you want to be. And LSU got bullied sometimes. Like, granted, you're going to look at the box score and see 117 yards rushing and 5 yards of carry, and that junk looks amazing. But when you needed to run the ball the most, when you had a chance to take control of the game, you couldn't do it. So when I know you're going to run it, and they know you're going to run it, and you know you're going to run it, and you couldn't do it. So they got to get more creative. They got to figure out things, and I just think they got to challenge the offensive line to be better. I don't think it comes down to anything much more than that, because I'm talking like guys were getting blown up in the backfield. That's not play calling. That's poor execution by the players. And I'm not a big player blame kind of person, but the offensive line talked about how much they were going to run the ball, and then when you go out there and you shit the bed running the football when you need to most, it kind of looks bad. And it did look bad. You had several 3rd and 1s, 4th and 1s where you couldn't run the ball. So the point where this game changed, and everybody who watched the game knows, like, it's not a secret. You have the plays in the 3rd and 4th quarter. You got stops on defense. This game, you score, it's 17-13. You get the ball not once, but twice, and you shit down your leg both times you got the football. You gained 1 first down. All right, you only chewed about 3 to 4 minutes off the clock in those 2 drives, which you had been eating up clock the entire game. You go down there and score. Granted, even if it's just a field goal, you go down there and score any type of points or sustain any type of drive, you win the football game. It's plain and simple. Brian Kelly was so pissed off because he knew he put his team and they put themselves in a position to win the game, and they didn't execute when they had to. USC went out there and made plays to win the game. LSU did not make the plays to win the game. They made the plays to take the lead and give themselves a chance to make the plays, but they didn't when they had to. You get the ball and boom, you hand it off, -5 yards. You get in the 3rd and 1. Everybody in the stadium knows you're running the football, and you couldn't block anybody. You get blown up in the backfield, -2 yards, you punt. Same thing. You run the ball, you get 2-3 yards. It's just not good enough. It wasn't good enough all night. The box score is going to say absolutely different, but I'm telling you, when you needed to run the ball the most, you couldn't. And that is the story of the football game, plain and simple. I thought there was going to be a big turnover. There wasn't. There was the last play of the game where Nussmeier threw an interception. Like, that's not a real turnover. Like, whatever that is. You didn't have the big play like that where you had a turnover. So both teams played pretty much flawlessly on offense and defense. It was a tremendously well-played game, which I have more respect for losing to an opponent that just played well and made the plays and you didn't. But your team, as an LSU fan, I didn't think LSU played extremely bad. Like, this wasn't a Florida State 2022 where you shit down your leg the whole first half and had to miracle come back and then miss an extra point. Like, you played well in this game. You played good enough to win in this game. The other team just beat you to it because you didn't make a couple plays here and a couple plays there, and they did. And that's really all it comes down to. I thought Garrett Nussmeier played fine. People were ragging on Garrett Nussmeier because he played bad. It's like the dude threw for 300 yards, 2 touchdowns. Like, what do you want? The biggest concern I have is the play calling. The play calling in the second half was absolute trash. You went in the first half, you were slinging the rock, you were running the ball. Like, you were being very balanced. And in the second half, you weren't being balanced at all. When you threw the ball, it was down into the flats. You weren't throwing the ball deep anymore. Like you couldn't move the ball down the field because there was no threat of an explosive play. So they're stacking the box, trying to guard against the runs, and you didn't even attempt to like take the top off the defense. The fact that Kyron Lacey didn't get a single reception. I'm not cursing. That was lip reading. I didn't curse. The fact that he didn't get a single reception in the second half is absolutely atrocious play calling. I don't give a dang what you call. If you got to call a jet toss, sweep, whatever you got to do to get this kid the ball, he's the best player on your offense. Get him the freaking football. The dude had 7 catches for 94 yards in the first half. They couldn't guard him. Caught 4 straight passes on the very first drive of the game and caught 3 the rest of the time, including one that was a touchdown and another one where he was that close to having another touchdown. So why is this kid not getting the ball? Why is Mason Taylor not getting the ball? Call the offense like you're trying to win the game, not like you're trying to lose it. You get a lead, and then it's like, oh, well, this is what Les Miles did back in 2012. You know, it worked perfect when they had an elite defense. The defense was never going to be able to hold up. Nobody's defense is going to be able to hold up against a Lincoln Riley offense like that. If you continuously just give them chances and chances, eventually the ball's going to bounce their way and they're going to figure something out, which is exactly what happened. You gave them the door, you left it open, and then they walked through it. It doesn't take much more observations from the game than that. Like, that's as simple as it is. LSU left the door open when they could have slammed it shut and won the game. They went there and they played passive and they got burnt for it because they literally tried to run the ball. They couldn't. And then when that wasn't working, they just continued to just throw the ball short, play conservative, let's not turn the ball over. And all of that shit's well and good when you're up 35 points. You know, when you're up 4 points in the fourth quarter, early in the fourth quarter, that shit don't work, you know? So that's where you lost the football game. I completely agree with Brian Kelly. You needed to have a talk with Joe Sloan after this game because that shit can't happen again. You can't play great teams. And don't get me wrong, I think USC is a good team. I like what I saw from them. I think both teams walking out of this football game are super happy about their defensive coordinator hires and their defenses as a whole. Now, that could change. USC could go and get shit on in a couple weeks when they play, I think they play like Michigan or whoever. LSU has a easier schedule than USC coming up. But LSU's going to have to play the big boys too. And when they go and play them, they might get run over. And who knows, both of these teams might suck. But I don't think that's the case because I think both teams played extremely well. LSU got killed with penalties. They didn't commit penalties. USC didn't. So that was a big thing in the game as well. But I think both defenses played well. I think both offenses played well. LSU just didn't execute when they needed to go win the game. And it's just plain and simple. That's as much as it is. Like, I'm not going to harp on it much more. I've kind of got all my thoughts out. Like, it's not going to get to the point where I'm sitting here trashing this team because I think this team is really good. I think everything they have to play for is still in front of them, and I think they're good enough to do it because they showed me majority of that football game that they're good enough to do it because I really do think USC is a good football team. I don't think this is a situation where it's Florida State in 2022 and that team is an 8-win football team or a UCLA team that's 8-5 or a Mississippi State team that sucks. Like, I don't think that's the case. Like, last year, Florida State was elite. Florida State was better than LSU. This year, I think both teams were super evenly matched. USC made the plays, LSU didn't, and that's what cost you the game. If LSU makes the plays, LSU wins the football games, and I think USC's telling themselves the same thing. They're feeling optimistic about what they saw from the game because they know they're only going to get better with Lincoln Riley calling plays, just like I think LSU's offense is just going to continue to get better with Joe Sloan calling more plays and getting more experience. Like, this team still is new to everything that Joe Sloan is doing. Granted, some of the concepts are the same and the teammates are the same, but it's not the same. Like, this run game is completely different. You're taking almost, I don't know how many yards rushing Jane Daniels had last year, but you're taking that away from this offense, and that's not something that's easily replaceable. And I think people took Jane Daniels for granted and thought Nussmeier was just going to come in and the offensive line was going to be elite and they were just going to run the ball down the throat, and that was just never going to be the case. You really hoped it was going to be the case because they talked the talk and they just couldn't walk the walk. So what this means for this team going forward is you have to get to 4-1. You have to get to 4-1. You play Nichols, you're going to win that game. You play at South Carolina, you have to win that football game. You play UCLA, you have to win that football game. You play South Alabama, you're going to win that football game. And if you go into that Ole Miss game, October 12th at 4-1, everything is still in play for you, right? You win that football game, and then it's on to the next. And then you take it as a week-by-week basis because, it, like I said, this new playoff system, they let 55 fucking teams in here. Dang, I was not supposed to curse. I apologize. But they let so many teams in this thing now. It doesn't matter what your record is. As long as you're like bowl eligible, I'm pretty sure you get a playoff spot. But realistically, like LSU has to play for 10-2. Like that's what you have to do. You have to win all the games you're supposed to win, and then you have to play Bama and Ole Miss, and you have to split one. You have to split the home games. That's the extent of their season right now. You have to win out and then split the Bama and Ole Miss game. If you lose one of those two games but prove that you can win one of them, right, you're in the playoffs. And who knows what that gets you at 7-1 in the SEC? Does that get you a spot in the SEC championship? I don't know, maybe. But if not, who cares? You're probably still going to be an at-large team if you're sitting at 10-2 and your only losses are to a USC team and then an Ole Miss or a Bama team. So everything LSU has to play for, they've got to get better. They've got to get more experience. I think this 4-game stretch coming up is super important, and we've got to see progress. We've got to see progress. I don't want to see tight games. I don't want to see them lackadaisically going through the motions. I want them to take every game seriously, and I want them to dominate like they should in the next 4 games. That's all I got for you guys today. I hope you guys enjoyed the breakdown, man. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. I love hearing from you guys, man. Make sure you drop a comment. Let me know how you're feeling about LSU. Is it time to panic? Is it not? I don't think so, man. I think LSU's got everything to play for still. With the new playoff format, man, this just makes basically another year, right? I mean, we're getting used to it at this point. They do this every year, so we've seen this movie many a times. They've been able to bounce back every year, and hopefully they'll be able to do it again. But thank you guys for watching, man. Check that out. Check out all of our videos. Check out our socials on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, all that good stuff, and I will see you guys next time.